Good morning everybody. Today we are going to learn what is cost, and thereafter we will try to understand what are overheads. Cost would refer to any expenditure which is spent on purchase of a product or manufacturing of a product. In case it is manufactured, it will include all the expenses which are incurred right from the first process till the last process. So all this will be included in the direct cost. There are even additional costs which will be incurred at the time of manufacturing and in the process of selling the product till the end, till the products reach the end consumer, and after they have been produced till they reach the end consumer, whatever additional expenses which have been met can be considered as indirect expenses, or we may also call them as additional expenses, or these are additional costs which are incurred. Direct costs will be those costs which are locatable, which are identifiable per unit, or in technical terms we may call it as per cost unit or per cost center. So all these expenses which are incurred per cost unit or per cost center will be, and which are locatable, which are identifiable, will all be called as the first direct cost. The second part, indirect cost, includes all additional expenses after the manufacturing cost have been incurred, or in case of purchase of finished products, any expenditure which has been incurred after the goods reach the premises. Thereafter, any form of expenditure, whether it is pertaining to promotion, whether it is pertaining to advertisement, whether it is pertaining to keeping them in the warehouse, all these storage expenses, all these expenses, financial charges, all these can be considered as additional expenses, and all these can be termed as overheads or additional expenses. So overhead specifically refers to additional costs, and they all refer to the additional expenses after the goods have reached the premises, or in case of manufacturing, after the fully finished product has been manufactured, any other additional expenditure will be termed as an overhead. Now we will try to understand some additional terms which we will have to come across connected to overheads. Allocation of overheads refers to the full amount of the specific expenditure when it can be allocated, or when it can be put to one cost center, or when it can be added to one cost unit or one cost center. We call that as allocation of overheads. We have another term which we call as apportionment of overheads. The total cost of a cost unit or the total cost of a cost center, when the entire amount will not be allocated to a particular unit, or in other words we can say the entire expenses pertaining to production or pertaining to any other activity in an organization, if they are clubbed together, and if we have to identify how much cost has to be incurred per cost unit, or how much cost has to be identified per cost center, this transfer, or this what you call redivision of expenses, total expenses among different cost units or cost centers, can be termed as apportionment of overheads. There are certain expenses which need to be further redivided or say reapportioned, and those we call as reapportionment of overheads. When do we need to reapportion overheads? Now there are sometimes in many of the organizations there are some cost centers, or there are certain cost units which will have some revenue. There are certain other cost centers or cost units which do not have any specific revenue. So those which do not have revenues, to identify the profit from such cost centers or cost units, it's very difficult, and therefore such expenses, such costs which have been incurred from these will have to be reapportioned only to those in which we will have to identify the profitability, only to those cost centers. So some expenses, some general expenses which have been met, which are inclusive of many additional cost centers, will have to be reallocated or will have to be redivided, and this process of identifying an appropriate amount for each of such cost center will be known as reapportionment of overheads. Thank you.